Welcome to the Whole Career Podcast with Advent Health. I'm Brandon Strawn, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sky Kellogg.
Each episode features conversations with various healthcare professionals who will share their personal career journeys, insights, and perspectives on various healthcare careers. From nursing to technology to leadership, we'll cover a wide range of topics to help you stay informed and inspired.
Whether you're just starting out in your healthcare career, looking to pivot, or a seasoned professional looking to take the next step, this podcast is for you. We hope to empower you with the knowledge and the tools needed to make a positive impact in your field. At Advent Health, we believe that we are greater as a whole, and we invite you to join us on this journey as we explore the world of healthcare careers together. Welcome back to the Whole Career Podcast. We are excited to have an awesome employee here with us today. Sergio, he is a PFS support manager supporting the multi-state. How are you doing today, Sergio?
Hello, Brandon and Sky. I'm doing well. Thank you for the invitation and for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Really quickly, I just want you to go ahead and let everyone know what a PFS support manager does. What are your kind of day-to-day right now? And I know you all we're not going to be able to hear the audience clap, but we just want to congratulate Sergio. He recently was promoted into this role. So we're just going to go ahead and congratulate him now and celebrate you. So we thank you for. I wish we had, the button so that we can get the audience to just clap for us, but we don't have that. But anyway, back to my question. Can you go ahead and just describe and kind of explain what your role is right now as a PFS support manager?
Absolutely. We have, with all the intricacies and in the cash collections being one of the being the top item on the list of our focus. Everything is driven from that metric, and what we do from there, it's pretty much do a reverse engineering and root causing everything that's delaying cash, whether that be root cause analysis on different teams of different payers, analytics for the managers, creating templates where they feel comfortable navigating the book of business that they have. So our team supports the three PFS directors in the multi-state, as well the executive PFS director that oversees the multi-state division. So our day-to-day, it could be very monotonous at times, and then another day it could be full of different inquiries and different lookups that you need to research to get the outcomes that we want.
Thank you, Sergio, for that intro. And as Brandon said, we're so grateful for you to join us today and talk a little bit more about revenue cycle. Now, this is obviously an area that you are very passionate about, and we are so glad that we have team members that we get to speak to that have niche areas that really get to highlight, what roles are out there within Advent Health outside of clinical roles that you hear of day to day. So as far as the revenue cycle world and getting into that as a career field, how did you find it as a career field, and how can you help others find this area of work as well?
That's a really interesting question, Sky, because for me, revenue cycle found me. I was right out of college. I graduated with a chemistry and business background, and I started doing marketing. Worked for a firm in Dallas in 2008. We had the big bubble economic hardship, and a lot of businesses. The first thing that they slashed was their marketing budget, and I found myself out of job, and anywhere else they were having the same struggles. And so how I landed in healthcare was through an introduction from a friend, an introduction to a friend. And I said, the only thing I know about hospitals, it's doctors, accountants, and nurses. That's all I knew. That's the limit that I have about healthcare. And shortly after that, we'll probably talk a little bit more in detail what really drove me in continuing in revenue cycle. But healthcare found me. The career found me, but it also it has a little bit of that curiosity minded to in order for you um, to find that position of anything that's there.
Absolutely. And so I want to go back a little bit. You double majored, I believe, and so it was chemistry and business. Is that correct?
I took general courses. So at SWAU, they had interval years, and there was a leap year where you had to take different courses, and I came in on the leap year. So it
Okay.
would have taken me 6 7 years to complete it. So by that time, I said no, I just need to get somewhere, you know.
Right.
So but I had a lot of the competencies and emphasis in both of those fields, um,
Okay.
and so business really drove my my curiosity after I graduated,
Right.
and that's why I pursued the marketing side. But
Right.
the analytical side of the chemistry really comes in handy.
Right. Yeah. So if I know where you are now, right, and you've been in this field, of rev cycle, right, for some time, and so I know that you love it. But let's go back to your college age, Sergio. What did you think you were gonna end up doing? What was like in that time? And I speak to a lot of college students in my line of work, and of course, at 20 or 21, they're like, this is exactly what I'll be doing next year this time, and then it's totally different, right? Which isn't a bad thing, but I just kind of want to know what did you think you would be doing, at that time?
That's awesome that you mentioned that because an average a college student goes through what 2 3 different major changes in their career, and I started in Guatemala in dentistry school, and I was doing really well. And there were some challenges about the grading structure on how it was done, and I was left with one class by 3 points from taking the final on that one class. And the rule was that you couldn't take the following year without having all your classes met. So I was left behind by one class, and I was so frustrated. And back then I lived in Guatemala, so I moved back and I came to visit my mom in the U.S. Over the summer, and Southwestern Adventist University was having a handshake that afternoon where all the students are welcoming each other, and my sister was attending Southwestern, and she said, "Hey, why don't you come tag along and and meet some friends or whatever." And that's how I ended up back at Southwestern, because I was going to have a free year after that. I had to wait the full year for me to continue going back to dentistry, and that's how I ended up at Southwestern Adventist University. Uh, so it was a really interesting story, and that changed my mind on what I wanted to pursue.
That's really inspiring because obviously that sounded so challenging for you, Sergio, and I'm sure you felt frustrated, like you said, and didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And now to look where you are today, I'm sure you're so grateful you went through those things to be where you are. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. And Sergio, I know your route is unique, right? And how you got to the revenue cycle world, but how do others end up in this realm? Do you have suggestions for them, those that might be viewing or listening right now, as to how they can get into this as a career field, maybe what other team members have done to get into this realm?
Absolutely. We Advent Health has evolved tremendously in healthcare, not only in the clinical areas but also in the non-clinical and more in the operational as well. The PFS related revenue cycle. Um, Advent Health offers a career path that during internships, as you're finishing the last 2 years in college, you're able to come in and spend a couple of months or the summer at any of our facilities, and you start exploring those areas that you might be interested, whether you're a business major or an accounting major. I always look at the interns, and I tell them, hey, if you're interested in revenue cycle, I'm going to explore a little bit of what we do. And a few of them have come and they said, what is revenue cycle? I don't understand what it is. And so I explained to them a little bit. I'd spent some time with an intern where he really tried to tie the accounting, the finance side to revenue cycle, and how everything it's related. It has so much synchronization in everything that we do. And there are career paths for revenue cycle with Advent Health, where you can create a 2 3 year down the line on how you can get on board. But if you're an outsider from Advent Health, how do you get to choose revenue cycle as a career? I think it's just a matter of having a curious mind, having people around you, questioning what is this career? What is this? What just having a lot of questions on what you really want to do as a student or even a high schooler, and I think that's important to find how you can get to the career that you want. But for me, it was how I developed my career path, being from the outsider, was understanding every single level that I worked with. I started as a Medicaid representative, and and I kid you not, I had some days where I don't like this job at all. Like I really don't, and calling government agencies and, hey, where's our money? Or you're going to pay us pennies on the dollar, and understanding how that dynamics work. Like, wait a minute, we're billing a dollar, but we're only expecting 15 cents out of this, and making that connection. It was a little hard, but constantly questioning the people around me. I think that's how I started learning from others. Hey, what are others doing? Are others doing something different? And just continuing questioning what you do if you're doing it well. Finding a person that can mentor you. I think that's the best career path and the best thing that you can do as a professional, is to ask someone for their time, and be bold about it, and also be very intentional about their time, and be open in having those hard conversations with that mentor. That mentor can be great value to a career.
That's awesome. We thank you for sharing that. And so for someone like me, right, in layman terms, because you mentioned Medicaid, so for our listeners, I'm hearing Medicaid, and then I hear revenue cycle, I'm hearing finance, and then I also heard you mention analytics. So for myself, when I'm recruiting students from our schools, I'm looking for finance majors, specifically for financial analyst positions. Those are usually the entry level positions that
Mhm.
the students enter into, right, or an accounting specialist position. But I've never worked with an entry level revenue cycle. So what does the entry level revenue cycle position look like? And kind of just breaking down, I heard you mention Medicaid, but what is revenue cycle, and how does that even translate for someone who is coming out of school and they're like, hey, I studied finance, but I want to get into revenue cycle, and you were to have to tell them, okay, here's some of the tools that you're going to be using in revenue cycle that you probably learned in school. If you could give us kind of an idea of that.
Yeah, absolutely. The revenue cycle is the life of claims. It's the process that a claim from patients that come in and visit any hospital. It's the methodology that we utilize in sending charges and in receiving payments, and anything in between is considered a challenge, an error, or an opportunity that didn't get corrected, and that's kind of where the revenue cycle comes in. Revenue cycle is the buffer between hospital charges and payers, like insurers paying what they should pay according to contracts. So that's a little bit of we're in lane terms, like you said, we're the turbo that accelerates or to work, right? So we're that piece that sends it out. Okay, now we're getting payment. And how does a an accounting or a finance or a analyst or even a math major can connect those pieces? For a finance major, it's net revenue, total charges compared to net revenue. What percentage of charges or we or are we building and we're getting back in the door. Profitability, that's all related um, from from the net revenue that we create based on those contracts that we recover. And for a data for an analyst, it's a lot of exploration, a lot of we have inputs of patient data, inputs from insurers, input. We have tons of data that we can slice and dice and find different ways of solving problems. And in a way, it's obtaining meaningful data, transforming it to make decisions, and portraying that information to others, to their stakeholders, whether that be a director, a manager, or a CFO. They make those decisions based on those analytics. Um, so, what is what the life for an revenue cycle intern uh, would include? It's probably insurance follow up. Once we send those claims out, they need assurance that they're working correctly or they've been received. Um, Obtaining its status of those claims, status on payment after certain days from discharge, and if it hasn't been resolved, it goes to the exploration part. Why didn't it get resolved? Why aren't we getting payment timely? And start connecting the pieces that we have with what the payers are saying um, through electronic remits. There's a lot of codes that the payers utilize, almost like an index, saying, "Oh, we're not paying this for whatever reason," and going back and say, "Okay, well, that shouldn't be right, or it's wrong," or and they move forward from there. So there's a lot of moving pieces that an accounting or a finance or an analyst can develop within the revenue cycle.
Thank you, Sergio. And you mentioned a lot in regards to obviously data is a core piece of your day to day. And one of the phrases we noticed that you like to use is looking beyond the metrics. So that ties in right with the curious mind that you said you have to be able to be in this role and asking the right questions. So, what does look beyond the metrics mean to you, and how is this incorporated in your day to day?
Beyond the metrics, have a thought that when we look at I think about World War II, and when all the bombers, the B-17s, and all those planes were sent down on missions, and they would come back. And there's a very um, there's a popular picture that relates to that, where it's a plane with a bunch of holes that they started gathering data on planes that were returning, and they said, well, we need to reinforce those areas that have a lot of bullets or a lot of hits. And a mathematician, his name is Abraham Elwold, he made a comment and he said, well, it's interesting that we should look at the planes that we have data on and reinforce those. But it's also interesting to see and explore the data that we don't have. And that's possibly the opposite of what we're seeing, that these planes made it regardless of how many bullets they received. What about those that didn't make it back? And I think those are the ones that we need to focus on, because if they didn't come back, it's because they have weak areas. And and that information was conveyed over to the engineers and the manufacturers at Boeing, and Boeing started making adaptations on those particular areas, the ghost areas that weren't there, that the data wasn't telling them. And that's a little bit of how I like to think beyond the metrics. We measure certain things, and we always need to be curious about what is not there, what data is not there that can be impacted to what I'm currently doing. For instance, a payer might say that we're not paying for this for X for whatever reason, um, and we measure those things. But is there something else that we're missing that we should be applying to this analysis or to this project or to this challenge in order to meet or look beyond what we're being presented? And that's what I like to refer that to beyond the metrics, because when we measure what's important, but what are the other variables that impact the importance of those metrics?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that and that awesome example as well. Really helps us understand.
And I've never really thought about it in that way before, especially because even, as a recruiter, and then Sky, I know herself being on this talent strategy team, and we're all on the same team. Well, Sky and I are on the same team. We often do have these metrics that we use of like the success, the successes, right? So, how many people we hired, how many people, made it to the Admin Health hiring expo, right? So all of these different KPIs, if you will, or numbers or metrics, right? But most of the times, at least for me, I just focus on the successes, right, and not the things that didn't happen. And so I think that's honestly a great nugget for myself, but also for the listeners. I think it's easier to focus on the successes. Like you really have to come to grips and with yourself and say, okay, I have to think on what went wrong. And a lot of people just don't want to focus on that because it's no fun. At
Mhm.
least to the human mind. Oftentimes we're just kind of trained to more so think on what worked, right? Because that helps build our ego, right? If something worked, then it's like, oh, it's because of me, so I want to go with what's working. But I just appreciate you mentioning that and explaining that in a way that is easy to understand. I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit. You've been at Advent Health for more than, I think, about 10 years. Is that correct?
Over 15 years now.
Over 15 years. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
So over definitely over 10. So yeah, so over 15 years now. And that in itself is something that is not done a ton today, right? Sticking with one employer, rising through the ranks as you did. But I do see that, and that you did step away from Advent Health at one point, and I believe it looks like an entrepreneurship, entrepreneur venture. Do you mind speaking about that and kind of what you were doing with that, and what your goal was in starting a business?
Yeah, absolutely. When I came in at that point in time, there was some of a restructuring operationally with the team that I was working at here for Adventist Health Systems prior to Advent Health, before rebranding, and those jobs were being taken by a different team, and so I found my way of okay, well, do I go down or do I go up? I can't go up because the team is being absorbed by a different team. So I made the decision to go out and put some of the skills that I have learned, and I did some contract work, doing exactly the same. Hey, I'm pretty sure that you're facing some challenges with payers right now, and I'd love to help you out. And I help one of the largest health one of the largest um, heart clinics in Fort Worth to accomplish some of the challenges that they were facing from restructuring their uh, their managed care contracts, their processes, their revenue cycle overall, at a smaller scale, of course. And then I love to network, and I always love to go out and engage to after hours. And I touch base with a gentleman, and he said, "Hey, I heard that you're doing so and so for someone." I said, "Yeah, how did you hear about it?" He said, "Oh, you know." And in this realms, people talk, and they share a little bit of what you are doing. He said, "I'm in orthopedics, and I'd love for you to come and check out what we're doing." And I said, "Okay, yeah, sure, definitely." And I ended up jumping ship from the entrepreneurial part that started, and started working for this orthopedic group, and they manage only orthopedics, revenue cycle management from front all the way to the back end. And let me tell you that that was a very eye opening experience for me, and I've learned a lot from that team as well. Not only because the way they performed and conducted business, but it was more of a, let's look at this differently. What we have right now is probably not working. Let's spend either you spend the next 2 hours figuring out what the challenge is, or you'll spend the next 10 hours looping around the issue. And that was their motto was work the challenge all the way through until you figure it out. And I've learned a lot from the chief operational officer. I remember one time he called me in. He said, "Hey, what is this?" And I remember telling him, "You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I can go and figure it out right now." He said, "Okay, good. Can you call me in 5 minutes?" I said, "I have 5 minutes to figure this out." Okay, fair enough. And I went and I said, "What is the most immediate path for me?" And I went and asked someone, "Hey, what do you know about this? Can you tell me?" "Oh, it's this and this." Okay, perfect. Called them back and I said, "Hey, this is the reason why um, you can't build this procedure in a certain way. You have to build it this way." He said, "Okay, thank you." And then I went out and I asked them, uh, "Hey, can I get a little bit of feedback on why you did that?" And we had a really lengthy conversation about it. And I said, I'd love to pick your brain some other time. And that's where I learned that it's okay for you to ask people to explain to you further, to give you feedback. And in a way, he mentored me in this way of thinking beyond the metrics. And that's where I gained that knowledge of, you got to look beyond what is presented and what's in front of us. That company ended up selling. Um, they sold out their their product to a different and bigger vendor, and I happened to be in the area in the hospital, and I stopped by to say hi to the director then here, and it was for Christmas, and I just wanted to say hello, and she said, "Hey, it was great seeing you," and I'm like, "Yeah, you too," and and then later that day I received the message, and she said, "Come see me next week," and I said, "Okay, sure, I'll stop by." And I came back, and our region had just gone from Series 400 to Cerner, and so they had a backlog of claims from the series. It was just an overload. And she said, "I know this is beyond or below the pay rate that you probably or anything that you're doing, but I'm just curious if you're up for the challenge." And I said, "You know, I'm up for the challenge. I'll come back." And that's how I came back to Advent Health. Not only that, there were two other aspects that I really missed about here. And that was having a family oriented company and atmosphere whenever I came to work, but also the opportunity to keep growing. And at that time, they had a flex schedule, which really worked with the family and everything with myself from the other company. So the day after, I turned in my resignation at the other place, and I came back, and because of those two things, uh, family and flex schedule.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you shared that experience because I think it's important to talk about what you learned sometimes when you leave an organization and come back and how that prepared you to be the manager you are today and built a lot of, it sounds like, the core understandings of your role and your position that you're in and how you're able to now help others learn and grow as well. So I appreciate you sharing that, Sergio. And I also want to talk a little bit more about, in regards to revenue cycle, we noticed on your LinkedIn, you share a lot about revenue cycle meetings and how those are of monthly meetings and how those are of great importance to you. So could you share why those are of great importance to you, but to the organization as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share. When we speak about metrics, it's really important to meet those metrics, and also meet and discuss why they happened, and also strategize in a room with the people that are responsible for that process, and come up with different solutions or ideas on why we keep seeing things over and over again. And if we have an occurrence of a certain metric, I think it's worth spending that time, as I was speaking before, that we probably say we don't have that time to be that luxury to be putting that time in researching this. No, to me, it's we don't have the time to continue doing the same thing over and over again. For me, it's let's just spend this. If it's going to take 3 weeks doing it, let's go ahead and spend the time doing it now. And at those meetings, we find importance in identifying by category what was the cause of those issues or the challenges that came to the meeting. And it could be people related, it could be systems related, or it could be payers related. In our case, when it's people related, I mean that we need to assume the responsibility as managers that it's our job to ensure that do they have the right tools to complete their job. If not, then that's on me, right? As a manager, do they have what challenges do they have that I should be breaking barriers down for the team? Okay, that's on us. What are other training issues? Okay, that's on us as well. As leadership, we need to assume the responsibility of when it falls on people, because we are the ones that are responsible that they have all those challenges, tools, and training perform. So if it's a payer issue, does that deserve a conversation? I tend to say sometimes we hold a lot of sandbox conversations where everybody meets at the sandbox and just draws and nothing gets done out of it, right? Look, we need to step away from sandbox conversations, what I say, and go with the big boys conversations and say, hey, knock it off. You're doing something wrong here. We're not gonna, we can't continue doing this. And a lot of times that's what it requires when it comes to payers issue. When our systems related, um, those are areas that we need to explore and say, is the system the one that's causing all this overload? And eventually that's going to land on our team, and the team's going to feel overworked, overwhelmed, and tired. So we need to identify that those three areas are the ones that are being affected: systems, people, or outside uh, variables that we can control. Then we can manage that. So that's why it's important for me to look at those that reporting monthly, and keep track of those issues. How did we perform better last month than we did to on those items that we identified? Are we making any progress on the people, on their systems and their issues? If not, then we need to have a deeper conversation of why they're not happening. So that's why it's important to have them either bi-monthly or monthly, but make sure that those three items, or that list gets shorter and shorter every time that you come in. We're gonna have new items that arise. That's just part of the job, but making sure that those are knocked down. That's the outcome. That's the goal.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I wanted to, as we close, I wanted to ask about that turning point. You mentioned you had an experience working in managed care, and if you could give us that story. I know that you said it's a turning point, and it's a wonderful story, but you could share it for our audience as we close out.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man. you know, I'd say that it was a turning point because at that point when I made that decision, I was either going to get fired or I was going to get fired. And those were the only two options. That turning point for me was when I was working in the managed care contracting. I started understanding a little bit more how those dollars involved affected our net revenue, the timing of working those claims to get paid. There was one claim from a payer that had landed in my queue, and I started working and I gained so much interest and learning from it. Yeah, because it was a very high dollar claim. It was over $200,000 that the payer didn't. It was delaying in paying. I'm going to say that delay, not that that didn't want. And so I took it upon myself and researching to understand a little bit more. And I asked for a copy of the contract, and I reviewed the contract. Kid, there was maybe 120 pages on that contract, and I read all through it. And then I said, okay, I'm going to work this backwards. What is the payer saying that we're not paying? And they say we're not paying for this, this, this. And I started understanding that there was a stop loss involved. It's a terminology of that at a certain amount, there's something else kicks in, and I researched more and more. And I remember reaching out to other peers outside and say, hey, um, what do you understand about this terminology? What would you expect from a payer? And and at that time, I was writing appeals based on templates. And I said, forget the template. I'm gonna write this appeal according to what it's needed. And I wrote the appeal 3, 4 letters, uh, 3, 4 pages, and I was citing parts of the contract, went back, and every turn it got kicked back by the payer. And I said, well, there's got to be a better way to get this done. And at that point, my leader, she said, "Well, I don't think we can do anything more. This needs to go to our legal team to work it." And I said, "No, I want to continue working it." And again, I took it upon myself, and I said, "I'll get it done." And I worked the appeal over again, and then I said, "I'm missing something here. There's a reason why it came back, and that's because it was not addressed to someone." And I went to the web, looked for who was the responsible for this territory to review appeals, and I addressed that appeal to that one person. And then after that, I said, if you fail to respond to me directly, I ended the letter that way. Um, you will be dealing with the Texas Department of Insurance. And I wasn't kidding around. I had research as well that I could send a copy, and I CC the Texas Department of Insurance, and I sent both letters. I faxed one letter that night. I remember staying very late working on that project. I sent one copy to the Texas Department of Insurance and one copy to the payer, faxed it at the same time. The next day, I get a phone call, and it's the payer wanting to pay for the 200 plus thousand dollars, and I said, "Well, no," and I hung up the phone, and I said, "What did I just do? What did I just do?" Right, and and I remember running back to my leader's office, and I said, "I have good news and bad news." She said, "Tell me the bad news." I just rejected the payment from the payer. He said, "Why in the world are you doing this and that?" And that upset. That can be upsetting to anyone.
Right.
And I said, "Here's the reason why. Here's the good news." And she said, "Okay, tell me the good news." And I told her the good news, and I said, "The contract says that we're over 120 days working this account through the appeals process, and the contract says that they owe us interest on it. So we ought to collect the interest on it. We did the right thing by the patient, by the facility. It should be clean." And there's a clause that points out. And she said, "You better be right about this." And I said, "I am absolutely right about it." And then the next day, the director of claims calls me and says, "Well, after further review, this is what we consider." And I said, "Here's the deal. Here's what I'm willing to pay to take. You pay me the interest because it's the right thing to do. You've been holding us and playing all these games, and I'm just not taking it anymore. And I'm willing to take this much, what you owed plus the interest. And the manager said, well, I don't think we can. And I said, I don't think you understand what the impact of this could do to your company because I sent a copy to the Texas Department of Insurance. And more likely, you will receive a call from the state. And that's going to impact your overall rating. And that caught their attention. And they said, I'm sorry, you did what? And I said, yeah, I did this. And right then and then, they agreed. They paid over. Um, it was it was a huge amount that needed to come with the payment that they had denied. And I remember clearly to this day that that envelope was addressed to me and the check to the hospital, of course. And they said, hey, you have FedEx mail. And I said, what? No one ever delivers mail to me here. I mean, it's a hospital, right? And the check was addressed with the envelope, it came to my name. And I remember running to back to my leader's office, and I said, "I got good news and good news." And and the eyes just what? We remember looking at the check, and I said, "If I can take a picture, I would." And that was the turning point for me in my career because I said, "I think I got something here. I think there's something here for me to explore." Where the passion in the persona comes out and it's coupled with the professional work. And when you start doing that, you start finding different ways of thinking and different way of finding solutions. And ever since it's been one of those things that anything that I get, I try to step back and look for what am I missing here, and how can I get the ultimate outcome from this? And that was the turning point in my career. And and I said, I think I can learn more in revenue cycle. What is there out there to learn? What more can I gain from another person? I remember reaching out to one of the biggest, and she has her own book written in managed care. And I remember reaching out to her on LinkedIn, and I said, "Do you have 2 minutes of your time?" And she jokingly said, "Well, I do charge about $400 an hour." And I said, "Sure, no problem." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Well, the worst thing that that person could have said was no." And so if you don't ask the question, the answer will always be no. But if you ask the question, you might well just get a yes. And I got the yes, and I got to dive into a person's biggest managed care mind about understanding contracting at that time, and it was invaluable. You can't put a price to that from the knowledge that you could get from a person reaching out to someone um, for help to understand your business.
Sergio, thank you so much for sharing that turning point in your career, as well as just your passion for the career that you're in, because I think that really shines through when you speak to it. And I hope that others that are watching and listening, if they're in the career, maybe they can relate, or if they're looking for what that next step is in their career, hopefully they too are inspired to look into revenue cycle and all the positions that fall under that realm. But most of all, we appreciate you sharing your story of perseverance and patience. And if we learned anything, it's a good reminder to ask questions, to be curious, and to remember the worst thing that someone can say is no when you're asking and reaching out for more information. So thank you, Sergio. And thank you for those of you that have joined us today. We appreciate you listening to the Whole Career Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date with the latest episodes. And if you have any questions or topics that you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Life at Advent Health. Until next time, take care.